thought I'd start with this one. And, as the world turns, like I said, I gave up my cable, man. This is just way too better than Oprah Winfrey or Judge Judy. This is real life. And I'm figuring it out. And I think most of America is figuring it out. These guys don't know what they're doing.
The real Soviet Union back in the day, and many years ago, spoke some Russian. I did learn from that trip there was plenty to be concerned about with the Russians. And so there was an article from, of all places, the New York Times. It's not always the bastion of truthfulness these days, but this article from April 23rd, 2015, Joe Becker and Mike McIntyre had asked to be made part of the record. But at the heart, it says, at the heart of the tale are several men, leaders of the Canadian mining industry, who have been major donors to charitable endeavors of former President Bill Clinton and his family. Members of that group built, financed, and eventually sold off to the Russians a company that would become known as Uranium One. Beyond mines in Kazakhstan that are among the most lucrative in the world, the sale gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all uranium production capacity in the United States. Since uranium is considered a strategic asset with implications for national security, the deal had to be approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of United States government agencies, not Congress, but agencies. Among the agencies that eventually signed off was the State Department, headed by Mr. Clinton's wife, Hillary Rodham Clinton. As the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, Canadian records show a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Other people with ties to the company made donations as well. It goes on to say, the time both Rosatom and the United States government made promises intended to ease concerns about ceding control of the company's assets to the Russians. Those promises have been repeatedly broken, records show. Goes on further to say, when the Uranium One deal was approved, that's Ms. Clinton's State Department approved the deal, the geopolitical backdrop was far different from today. The Obama administration was seeking to reset strained relations with Russia. So it wasn't the Trumps that went over and belittled the Bush administration's adverse reaction and principled stand against Russia's assault on Georgia. That was a principled stand by the George W. Bush administration, which was completely belied and besmirched by the State Department Secretary Hillary Clinton, and saying we want to reset the relationship, even though they didn't know the word for reset. But the deal, in the article, said the deal was strategically important to Mr. Putin, who shortly after the Americans gave their blessing, meaning the Clinton, Secretary Clinton, sat down for a staged interview with Rosatom's chief executive, Sergei Korenyakov, who said, few could have imagined in the past we would own 20% of U.S. reserves. He told Mr. Putin, that is Russia owning our reserves. So the article is quite telling, and there's massive amounts of money that enriched the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons. And I also want us not to forget that it was this committee that still has not heard back from the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia on Secretary Clinton's sworn testimony in which she clearly perjured herself regarding her use of a private email server. So these are very, very disturbing developments. I'm very pleased that my colleagues across the aisle are now concerned about Russia, possibly as much as I have been for much of my life. And I would ask that this amendment may be made part of the amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute so
Gentleman
that
yield
we
for
can get to the bottom of it. And I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?
Would
the gentleman yield?
I yield to the chairman.
Chair? And without objection, the chair would be happy to recognize the gentleman for 2 additional minutes, so he can also yield to the gentleman. First of all, I appreciate the gentleman's amendment. The problem is that a resolution of inquiry is an inappropriate and really ineffective method for conducting effective oversight. That's why I oppose the underlying resolution. It's why I will vote to report it unfavorably, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I'm happy to work with the gentleman from Texas, however, on his specific concern as this committee moves forward with its oversight work. And I think his concerns are legitimate, and as the gentleman knows, I share them. Despite our efforts, this committee has never had a full accounting of the Clinton Foundation's work and its foreign contacts. If the gentleman would agree to withdraw the amendment, I would be happy to continue working with him to address those concerns and any others he has through legitimate means of congressional oversight. Now, let me add to that, because folks on the other side have said we're not doing anything. That's not true. First of all, at the last resolution of inquiry considered by this committee, both the minority and the majority sent letters to the Justice Department. Following the sending of that letter, the ranking member and the chair were briefed in a classified setting by the director with regard to the issues at hand in that resolution, which are very similar to the ones in this one. And while I cannot disclose the classified information discussed in that briefing, I can say that the following Monday, a hearing was held in the House Intelligence Committee at which the director publicly confirmed that an investigation is ongoing into some of the matters that are the subject of this. Secondly, the offense that occurred here, unlike when the former Attorney General, Mr. Holder, came before this committee and testified, and his testimony was questioned, the offense occurred in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the Attorney General has since clarified his statements, and the Senate Judiciary Committee has said, we're not going to pursue this any further. At the same time, the Intelligence Committee in the House and the Intelligence Committee in the Senate are conducting investigations, and that is a strong indication that this matter is being pursued both by the administration and by the legislative branch. So I do not see any point to this resolution of inquiry other than as a fishing expedition for political purposes, and that is why I will vote to report it unfavorably. But if the gentleman would
And Mr. Chairman, I know you to be a man of your word. You give me your word. You will work with us in pursuing the basis for my amendment, and with that basis, I will withdraw the amendment. Thanks, Chairman.
Are not subpoenas. Rather, resolutions of inquiry, if acted upon by the House, have no greater legal force or effect than sending the Attorney General or the President a letter requesting this information. The difference, though, is that sending a letter would not monopolize the committee's time. The first of the two resolutions we will consider today, House Resolution 184, was introduced on March 9th by Representatives Jeffries and Liu. I have moved that the committee report the resolution unfavorably. This resolution essentially seeks two types of information from the administration. First, it requests documents regarding whether then Senator Sessions misled the Senate Judiciary Committee regarding his contacts with Russian officials during his confirmation to be Attorney General. Second, the resolution requests documents related to Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 presidential election. In regard to the request for documents related to the allegation that Attorney General Sessions misled the Senate Judiciary Committee, I believe that the resolution is wasting the committee's time. The Senate Judiciary Committee has looked at this matter, and Chairman Grassley has determined that Attorney General Sessions has cleared up any confusion regarding his testimony, and that the committee has no plans to ask him to return to the committee to explain himself further. As to the resolution's request for information regarding alleged ties between the Trump campaign and transition team and the Russian government, The investigations into these matters are ongoing, and it is inappropriate for this committee to seek documents related to those investigations at this time.
Facts, and we need all of our leaders to have tough questions asked of them, and that's what the press is there for. So what President Trump is doing, to me, is an outrage. I mean, to look at what he has done with the press in a little over 50 days. Almost every day you hear the term fake news. He calls members of the press, those of you out there, he says you're dishonest, says you're sleazy, says you're among the worst human beings, and he has declared that the press is the enemy of the American people.
Dr. Maines. Anyway, stay tuned. You can find me on Facebook under Judy Jones, Gasper, Wyoming. I look a little better because I don't have my hat on it, but I'll be doing this. And I hope to see you. And thank you, Patriots. Thank you, America. Thank you guys for turning out to support a real president. They can't hurt him. They keep throwing these bullets at him, and it's bouncing off. You know why? God only sends his strongest to take on the most hardest of jobs. So with that, God bless the vets, the cops. Yeah, I even like the cops. Especially love the sheriffs. But anyway, FBI, kind of worried about you guys. NSA, worried about you. You need to be reined in a little bit. Accountability is accountability. And it's time that everybody pay for the piper. So, good luck and God bless America.